right, looks like it's 5 o'clock if you're ready to get going,
Yes.
Ms. Canning. Perfect. Well, good evening and welcome to the City of Boise Hearing Examiner public hearing. A few first things to start off with for tonight's proceeding. First off, everyone from the public entering the hearing virtually has automatically been muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you will be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom. This is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team. We'll then go to the appellant or applicant, and then the representative from the Registered Neighborhood Association. This will be followed by questions from the hearing examiner. And then after that, we will proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person and then those who are virtually present online. If you are attending through your telephone, you can type *9 to raise your hand. And each speaker should state their name and address for the record. And each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. Finally, the applicant and/or appellant is allowed time for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the hearing examiner will deliberate and render a decision. And with that, Ms. Canning, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. For the record, I'm an independent decision maker hired by the City of Boise and approved by the City Council. I make decisions on variances and administrative appeals. Any request to reconsider these decisions must be formally requested in writing pursuant to City Code. We only use a consent agenda to adopt findings related to previous decisions. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed a few minutes ago by staff. Also, for the record, I get a copy of all the staff reports prior to these hearings, and I do spend time going through them in a lot of detail and researching every bit of code raised in them or related in them. So I just want for folks to know that I have thoroughly researched these before you come tonight. So thank you all for attending. And again, for the record, I, Anna Canning, will be the hearing examiner rendering decisions tonight. All right. Now we're going to move on to the meeting minutes. So the meeting minutes from the June 26, 2024 hearing are up for approval, and without objection, I will place the minutes from our June 26 meeting on the consent agenda. At this time, I would like to accept those minutes for the record. Always feels a little bit awkward, like I'm talking to myself up here, but we need to get through these things. All right, so for now, we'll move on to new business. And the first item before us is CBA 240027, located at 2810 West Bannock Street. This is a reconsideration request for denial of appeal of the planning director's approval of 2 duplexes on a single lot of 0.14 acres in an R3 zone.
Good evening, Ms. Canning. As detailed in your packet, the planning team has received a request for reconsideration of the hearing examiner's denial of the appeal of CZC 24-27. As a reminder, the appeal was of the planning director's approval of 2 duplexes on a single lot on 0.14 acres at 2810 West Bannock Street in an R3 zone. The planning team has reviewed the request for reconsideration, which is included in your packet, and does not believe that the appellant has provided new information that demonstrates that the initial decision is in violation of city code or state or federal law. Therefore, we recommend that requests be denied. However, if you do opt to grant the request for reconsideration, the planning team will ensure that a future public hearing is scheduled in accordance with Boise City Code.
Thank you. So are you the applicant? No, okay. So at this time, I am going to deny the reconsideration request. I did go through the application in detail. The items that they said, please look into this. I did look into it. I delved deeper. But really, all the points they raised were again related to multifamily rather than 2 duplexes. And were generally related to the building code and what happens if they can't meet various provisions. Well, if they can't meet various provisions, those provisions are still there and they have to meet them. So I did not see anything that warranted reconsidering the appeal. All right. So at this time, I'm going to deny the request and my previous decision will remain in effect. Okay, now we're moving on to CZC 24-00027 Medici Architects.
Oh, and Ms. King, just to be clear, that's actually CVA 24-00008, the Hatch Design
Yep,
Architect. Yep,
sorry.
item number 1.
I was wondering what was going on. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mr. Koenig. The item before you is CBA 24-8. This is a variance to encroach into the interior side setback for an accessory structure located on 0.2 acres at 917 Jefferson Street in an R2 HDO zone. On Tuesday, July 23rd, the applicant indicated the submitted site plan may have inaccurate measurements and the existing garage may be as much as 5 foot 9 inches away from the property line. The planning team recommends that the item be deferred to a later date in order to give the applicant time to verify the accuracy of the submitted plans and to understand if the variance request is actually necessary. However, if the applicant and hearing examiner wish to hear this item tonight with the originally submitted documents, staff is prepared to present those findings based on those documents in the staff report.
Okay, let's, before we decide to have staff go through in more detail, let's hear from the applicant. So I think the question before the applicant tonight is, do you want to be heard tonight or do you want to defer so that you can get a survey so that you know where your structures are going to be relative to the property lines?
Is your mic on?
Madam Canning, Jeff Hatch, Hatch Design Architecture, 200 West 36th Street, Boise, Idaho, 83714. In talking with Jesse, we did feel that the survey was necessary. We did have a very brief presentation that we would like feedback from you on in relationship to the application, should that proceed. So we did want to do both this evening, if that's all right.
And Ms.
So,
Canning,
Mr. Hatch, can you come back up, please? Thank you. Sorry. So how confident do you feel about the property lines and their relationship to the existing structure and the structure you've proposed?
Historically, property lines in this area are subject to change based on fences and buildings, but in theory, the property line would align with the existing fence adjacent to the shop. The actual assessed aerial would have something that reflects our current site plan, but we feel in looking at it and discussing with staff in greater detail that it's worth investigating to determine the actual location and relationship to the property line. If we are correct, we would be at about 5 foot 9 inches beyond the setback by about 9 inches.
And in that case, if you're 5 foot 9 inches, you meet the full side yard setback. So that part of the variance falls out. I think my concern and staff's concern is if you don't really know where the property line is, this a variance, you know, we could be talking inches or we could talking feet or we could be talking nothing at all. And a variance is a very high standard to meet as far as whether you qualify for one. And the preciseness of that site plan is hugely important. So I'm a little reluctant to start a public hearing just to continue it to another date, because it sounds like we need to continue it anyway so that you can get the property surveyed. What are your thoughts about that?
Madam Canning, when we did our pre-application meeting for this, it was our understanding that this is quite possibly the first variance that has been heard by staff and hearings examiner under the new code. And so part of our intent this evening would be to present a proposed variance, which we may in fact need to continue with. And in that case, we would be mostly gathering feedback as far as what your concerns or considerations would be as we navigate this new code. I'm very intimately familiar with the old way of viewing variances. I'm also very interested, more so, in your interpretation of the new code in relationship to that.
Oh, so just to clarify, you want to move forward with the hearing tonight?
We would, Madam Canning, propose to present our variance with the consideration that we would like to accept staff's recommendation for a survey. So we would propose tabling the conclusion of this hearing until that survey is provided.
This is an unusual situation. I'm well, let me ask the staff a question. Staff, you are prepared to move forward tonight? I don't see any public I assume the owners are these folks, yes. There is a nod of heads. There's no public here, so I guess there's no harm in hearing, but without all the information, I don't, you know, without all the information, I'm not going to give you a lot of direction. I could make a ruling. And without all the information, that ruling may not be the right one. Does that make sense? Do you understand my reluctance to go forward?
Madam Canning, if I understand you correctly, I'm getting the feedback that you're not supportive of wanting to table this. You would either want to hear it to render a decision, or if we're going to table it, let's just table it now.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Sounds like we would graciously appreciate your consideration for tabling the application at this time.
I will do that. And have you considered a date? Well, given that you've just decided this, you might want to talk with your clients and propose a date. Staff will need that survey a couple weeks before the next hearing. Surveyors are a little hard to get sometimes and to get out to the property in that time. So I suspect you're looking at September, but you can decide on a date for tabling. And I'll give you a little break to go ahead and do that if you'd like, Mr. Hatch.
Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Hatch, I think the direction was, what would be a good date for you so that you have time to get the survey that would be needed to continue this conversation in a logical manner?
Traditionally, as Madam Canning had mentioned, surveyors take about 2 weeks to mobilize, approximately 2 to 3 weeks to actually do their work and render a stamped record of survey. So it would be at least a month, I would I would venture to guess conservatively.
Yeah.
If we propose that and we know, through, 2-3 weeks out, if we understand when you would need to publicly notice, we could confirm if we need to defer that. But ideally, we would certainly want to provide this information as quickly as possible for both staff and Madam Canning.
I think based on that, the September hearing date, which I believe is September 28th, if I'm not mistaken, would be probably the appropriate one to defer it to, if that's all right.
There are nods from the, it looks like one of the owners wants to speak. Go ahead, come on up. Come up and state your name, please.
What day of the week is that?
It'll be a Wednesday evening.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, we are, let me find the language, hold on. Oh, is there anyone present wanting to testify online?
I see a Cindy and a Shannon online. If you could virtually raise your hand if you are present to speak on this and could not return at a September hearing date. And I see both folks have raised their hand. I'm going to unmute Shannon first. Hi, Shannon. Feel free to unmute and can you?
Okay, you're just asking of my availability for a September 28th date?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, that's not a problem.
Just a point of clarification, I believe it's the 25th of September.
Oh, the
Thank-
Wednesday, 25th.
Yeah, September 25th, excuse me.
Okay. That shouldn't be a problem.
Perfect. Thank you, Shannon. And then let's see, Cindy. I think you should.
Hi, me.
Yes. Would you be available to return on September 25th to speak on this item?
Hello.
Hi, Cindy. Can you hear us?
I can, yes. I'm so sorry. I am caught in this windstorm outside. I am the representative of the East End Neighborhood Association, and I am filling in for our committee chair on this application. So I am unsure of her availability for September, but I could make that meeting. So I suppose, yes, we are available.
Perfect. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
And that's everyone online and no one's in person. So I think we're in the clear there.
All right, so we have a request to defer item 1, CBA 24-8, located at 917 East Jefferson Street. And just gonna quickly verify with the applicant if they'll be prepared for the hearing on September 25th. I see nods. And as I mentioned previously, staff would need a valid survey of the site dimensions at least 2 weeks before the hearing date. And staff will coordinate with you on those details directly with the applicant. So with that, I'm a little unsure. Is that all I need to do?
That's all you need. Yep. If you just,
Okay.
actually, Ed, would there be an official motion and a acceptance of that motion, I suppose?
Okay, I move to I move to defer item 1, CVA 24-8 until September 25th. And
Great.
I accept my own motion. And to the applicants from Hatch Design, you did a wonderful job describing the applicant's request. You may have noticed in the staff report, there are some findings related to a variance. A little more information regarding those findings, like why you should have the variance, would be helpful if there's unique properties of the site. So when you submit the survey, you might look at providing a little information about how the project meets those findings for a variance. Okay, with that, we are through our agenda. And I move to adjourn myself. Thank you, everybody.